Hey guys, so let me do a quick recap on where we left off last time. So we created these scenarios. These are Cucumber scenarios, and we are trying to automate these test cases, which I have for which I have first used Postman to execute them, and later I used RestAssured to automate these test cases. So I have automated around 6 test cases for using JUnit, and I think 1 test case for Post. Now, whatever we have done here is what we need to do again, but this time using Cucumber. So let's start. So last time what we did was we created this feature file. We created a runner test file, which is actually responsible for running the Cucumber. Then we have a step definition file here called as get request step defs. Inside this, I have written these step definitions. If you don't know, or you're new to this video, if you don't know how to create these, just go through the last video where I am talking about from scratch on how to set up this Cucumber. Let me just go and show you the POM file as well on what are the dependencies I've added. So I've added here Cucumber dependencies, 2 Cucumber dependencies, and 1 more extra dependency called as Cucumber Pico container, which is used for, as you see here, dependency injection. I'm going to cover that maybe later, not now. So let me go back to this feature file. So now, since I have the plugin installed on my Eclipse, I can directly go to these steps from here. I press Control. In the case of Mac, I am pressing Command button, and if I go and click on any of these, I get to go to in their step definition files, step definition methods. Now, what do we have here is a simple exception throwing statement. That means this particular step needs to be implemented. Right now it's not implemented. That's why this is the Cucumber default exception, where it says if it gets executed, it will be just error will be just thrown by this method saying that this is not yet implemented, it's pending. Right, so we need to remove all that and we need to start applying our methods here. Okay, so to do that, let me go back to our original test. This was our original test, isn't it? Wherein where we have this test case test T01 get request fetch all users, and where I am in a single statement doing everything. But if you notice in this particular RestAssured method, it is also in itself is divided across 3 statements. So this part is given, this part comes under comes under when, and this part comes under then, at least till here, right? The similar behavior is what we need to implement here, because here also we are trying to do the same things. A given Go REST API is up and running. When I hit the API with get request and endpoint as this, API should return all the users, right? So I need to convert this test case, and it should look like this test case, right? So let's start. So what I'll do first, maybe to give you some understanding, I'll copy this much, only this much, and I'll put it inside the step defs. How will I go there? I can directly click this and I will go here. Maybe for now I'll paste it here, and for now maybe let me remove this line. This is not really useful for now. I'll keep it here. And we need server and access token for sure, because without which the RestAssured will not know which server to hit and with what authentication. So I will copy these 2 statements again from here, and I will paste it here. But again, there will be 2 methods which are required. So those methods are present inside extends test base, right? There's a test base. So I will do the same. I will extend this extends test base. Maybe this is an example, when someone asks you, have you used inheritance in your project? You can say, yes, we are using inheritance in our project by implementing test base. What do we have in test base? Let me also show you what do we have in it. So in the test base, we have some common things which can be shared across multiple classes. So in this case, load property is what I have inside test base. Sometimes people also keep, for example, if it were a Selenium project, we would be declaring, we could have declared driver here to share it across all the steps. a step def. So all the common thing which you feel that it should be reused across your class files, and in this case your class files are step defs, you can put that inside test base. Right now I am keeping only two methods, which is property load properties. This is used for loading the properties from config.properties file, where I have kept these variables URL and token. And let me go back, URL and token. And there is one common method which is used for generation of random string. This is also I have kept inside test base. So these are the two files I have kept it. If let's say I have something else which I would like to share across my step definitions, I could put it here. Or I could also, it's not mandatory to do these things via this test base. It's just, I wanted to explain the use case for it, how to use methods which is can be reused across various projects, and how to do that. So that's the purpose I have used this. So now let me go back to my original statement, which is step definitions. So if you notice, I have this given, and I have this when, and I have this then, but this time I need to keep this inside different methods. So in the given part, I have to keep inside given, when part I have to keep inside when, and then part I have to keep inside corresponding then method. So for example, in this case, this test case is about get fetch all users, and here API should return all the users. So this is the method in which I need to write that. So maybe I will copy it. Maybe I will copy this, and let's for now remove these two statements from here, and I'll remove this as well, and I will remove for now, sorry, I'll remove this as well. So right now what I'm trying to do is to categorize them and divide these across various methods. But the problem is I cannot directly straight away do it. I cannot just copy this, cut this and paste it here, only this statement, because there will not be any object against which this will be applied. This is actually applied against this object. This is actually applied against get, right? This is a builder pattern of RestAssured. So what I need to do is to break it. In the previous video, I think in the first 3 sessions, I explained how can you break it. So if I start breaking it, it's pretty straightforward. So when I say given base auth 2, this actually returns me a request specification object. And I can use request specification object. Okay. Now, when I do this when, I need to apply this when to some object, right? And this actually gets applied to the request specification only, right? So I have broken these two statements, request specification. So maybe I'll bring that into a single line so that to give you some perspective. So this is, I'm not doing something special. All I'm doing is to break these, these calls, which is right now in a very sequential manner in tandem applied on each other in a builder pattern or method chaining manner. I'm dividing those statements into individual statements. And every time I divide it, I need to know what this statement returns. So in this case, when I say given.base URI, or how will you know that? When I do given.base URI, you see request specification here as a return type of base path or base URI, right? So that is how basically I would know what this particular statement would return. Even if I use this auth 2, here also it is returning request specification, right? So this is how I actually came to know that this statement will return request specification object. Once this is being returned, I can apply that in the when part. So request specification dot when dot get. Now, when I do this, this also would return something, right? How would I know what it would return? I'll do a dot get. Now, when I apply get on any method, on when method, it returns a response object. So that is how I would know that this is a response object. So I write like this, response object. I will, response object. Now again, where this then will be applied, because when I say dot then, that means this then is applied on a response object, isn't it? So I can just write here response. response assert that. Okay, so now my three statements, one was given statement, second was response statement, sorry, this was when statement, and this was then statement. That is how I have divided these three. Now I can easily keep this inside my corresponding method. So let's do that. So Go REST API is up and running. So this is, for me, it is given base URI and authentication. So until unless I have request specification, I cannot do anything. So by this statement, I am making sure that my API has all the base URI and authentication specification with it, right? So I will do, simply I'll copy this, and instead of writing this here, I will paste it, right? Second is when I hit the API with get request and endpoint as this, right? So let me do that. I will copy this, and instead of writing this, I'll put it here. Now here's a catch. The catch is this request specification has been declared here inside a method. The scope of this object is only till here, but I need to make it available, make this object available here. What is the easiest way to do it? Yeah, easiest way to do it is I will make this as an instance variable. So I can declare it at the top. I will mark it as null, and I need to remove it from here. So what's happening? When given will be executed, request specification here will be set by this, and this will be accessible from other methods as well, right? Same thing I need to do with the response. So I will copy this now, and this is API should return all the users. And when I say API returns all the users, I should be validating everything. So this part, then part is validating status code as well as 4 or 5 more things, right? So I will copy this and I will paste it here. Here, same thing. I have to declare it at the top because this is a response object whose scope is only till this method, and I need to pass, or I need to make this variable available in separate different method. So to do that, I will declare it at the top here. I will mark it as null for now, and I will remove this declaration. So now things are pretty straightforward. What I've done is I have divided this statement. I divided this statement into multiple three or given when then sections, and given when then sections I have written inside these methods, these annotated methods. So what will happen when this gets executed? When this gets executed, it will go and execute this method. Second time when this gets executed, it will execute request specification when dot get, and when at last when this gets executed, in that test case, it will run the then part. And that is how I actually can convert or write rest assured validations in Cucumber. I'm going to do that for all the other test cases. Maybe I'll not record everything, but this is the way to do it. So for all the get requests which we created earlier, so get request, so first, second, third, in all these I have to apply the same logic. But before that, there is one more important part which I missed. That is that this is a statement. I hit the API with get request and endpoint as this. But if you notice, this is parameterized. That means I'm going to use the same statement to hit the API, only the endpoint would change. An endpoint I'm sending from outside. So in this case, let me put this into contrast to this specific class here. So this is for fetch all users, endpoint was this. In this pagination, endpoint was something else perhaps. In this particular single user, the endpoint was somewhat different, right? So I have the privilege to modify the endpoints from outside, that is from the feature file. I need not write the duplicate method every time for which corresponds to a different endpoints every time. All I'm doing is I'm using the same method, and every time I send this method, I have the option to send different endpoints. So even though if I have this endpoint, or maybe if I go back to this, if I have this endpoint, I have this endpoint, I have this endpoint, irrespective of what endpoints I have, I can still use the same statement. That means the same method. That is how we say we have. That is how we say we have parameterized step defs. And when I say parameterized, that is what happens. Whatever you send from outside is being captured, is being written here as an annotated string, and inside the method, it is being passed here as an argument. So whatever I'm sending from here, which is this, is being saved inside the string, right? And I should not be hard coding this statement like this. I should be writing here, this here, or maybe I will write, change the name for the sake of understanding, endpoint, right? So this method can be reused. So this step can be reused again and again for different endpoints as well. But that is not really the case with the validation part. So see, this is being reused, this is being reused, this is not being reused, because this is different for every test case. So every scenario here actually represents a test case, right? In this case, I have to check API should return all the users. In this case, I have to check API should return all the users with specific pagination value. Here I have to check API should return single user details, right? So that is the reason I have these three different statements to do that. So what I'll do is, let me tell you perhaps one more thing before I shut down the video, because I'm not going to record conversion of every test case which I have here. I'm going to just do that and upload that whole code in the GitHub for you to see later. But this is how you actually do things. One last thing is about the scenario object. So what I'll do, or maybe I will also have to run this for you. So I'll create a before hook, public void, I'll write setup, and here I will write scenario, scenario s, and at the top I will write @before. Now before here, by the way, before, when you import this before, you need to make sure you're not doing this. You have to do this before, cucumber.api.java. Don't make that mistake, otherwise it will be weird. It will not give you right outcomes. So this setup or this before is something like which you might have used in the JUnit or TestNG. This before methods gets executed every time you run a scenario. So when this scenarios get started, it will execute. First, the before method will get executed. When you do this, again the before method will get executed. So every time you run it, the before method will get executed. Second thing about this before is, this has a very high use case for our any Cucumber framework. I'm going to come to it later as well. But just for some level of understanding, I have introduced a interface here called a scenario. This again is reside inside Cucumber API scenario. And if you can read the description, before this only can be sent as an argument inside before and after hooks that declare a parameter of this type will receive an instance of this class. Excuse me. It allows writing text and embedding media into reports, as well as inspecting results. So it has three main purposes. One is it can write logs, which we really want because we want to write something in our logs. Second is it allows embedding media. So let's say if we are using it for Selenium, it can take screenshots. It doesn't take screenshots, it can embed screenshots inside the reports. And third is inspecting results. So every time when test case runs, it has a status. Status is either it's a pass or it's a fail or it's pending or something. So you can analyze it and use it inside after hook. So I'll come to that part later. This actually is important when it comes to when do you take screenshots. I think we discussed this in yesterday's class as well. But for now, we will use this for just writing of the logs, right? How will I do it? And this concept is also called as native dependency injection of Cucumber. Dependency injection is a concept which I'm going to cover later, not now, but just remember this concept is a native dependency injection mechanism of Cucumber, right? There is another way of doing dependency injection. Maybe that is the reason I have added here this Cucumber picometer. Now this is an explicit way of doing a dependency injection concept, but here Cucumber has done it natively. That means for this you don't need to add that dependency. So don't confuse this, that this is I am able to do this because I have added this Cucumber. Even if I don't have this Pico container, Cucumber Pico container library added, I can still use this, because as I'm saying again and again, this is native dependency injection. That is, it comes with Cucumber only, Cucumber library. So I'll come to its use. So what I'll do first is I'll create a variable at the top, scenario, and give it a name as S, as simple as that. Second thing I will do is I'll write this dot S is equal to S. So what happens at runtime? Again, a very basic explanation. This is an interface. As you can see here, there's an I here. It means it's an interface. So when Cucumber starts execution, it creates an instance of this interface. So that instance will be an object. A proper object will be created by the Cucumber, and it will inject that here. And once it is injected here, I am saving that here at runtime. And this as object is I'm going to use across my whole class to do the stuff which is supposed to be doing. That is, it can embed screenshot, it can write logs, and it can check the status. Right now for this specific video, I am using it for writing of the logs. Now where do I need to write logs? So let me remove this because I don't need it now. Where do I need to write logs? So I need to write logs maybe after when I hit it, right? So when I hit something, I need to see what is the response, because when I just run this, I will not see anything. Or maybe even before I implement log, I'll just show you how to run it. So if I go ahead and for running this Cucumber, I need to go to run test, and I need to right click, and I need to do a run as. Now there are two ways to do it. Either we can use JUnit, or we can also use Maven. But here I'm using JUnit. So when I just run this, let's see what happens. So it has executed the test. No, so it didn't execute because I think the runner test, I need to mark this as false. So dry run true means, as I said in the last video, it will run it without actually running it. It's a pseudo run. So dry run has to be marked as false. That means I'm not running. I actually want to execute it. So I will again right click. Sorry, I'll again do a right click, run as JUnit test. Let's see what happens now. So all three steps failed. Let me see what happened. Okay, I think the URL which I entered here is not right. For the demo purposes, I marked it as dev, but right now I have no dev environment. So I have to rename it again, run as. So that is how it is saying. I think it didn't run properly. So I think the first step was passed. Second step was implement me. Okay. Okay, this is a second test case, third test case, because second test case and third test case is not actually implemented. So this test case and this test case is not actually implemented, and only test case which is implemented is this test case, and that test case got passed. Now, how would I know what it returned, right? Even there will be a report generated, because in the run test I have written HTML and JSON. There will be two reports generated, by the way. Okay. If I go and refresh it, maybe I could see something. So in the target folder, I can see HTML. This is the HTML report. This is a JSON report. JSON report, right now we don't have any utility for it, but HTML report is what we can see. So I can right click on it, open with web browser. So you see here, this is implemented, but these are saying it's pending exception, because, and in this also, it did these two things. In this test case also, it did these two things, but it couldn't do the validation because I haven't written the validations here yet. Both the validations I have written pending exception, pending exception. So this is how I can see the report. But the problem is, in the first test case which got passed, and even in the second and third test case, I don't see what was returned from the server, and I need to see that, and I need to log that as well in my report. Now, if you notice, this view of this report was not available when we had this file. Now this was simply JUnit file. We don't have any notion of HTML reporting here, so I didn't see anything. So something's better than this in Cucumber. That in Cucumber we have a report as well, which we can publish. We can send to people to say that we have executed this thing. That is what is required for a framework, right? Without this, a framework cannot say or cannot predict or cannot tell you what happened, what did it do during the execution, right? Reporting is a mechanism by which framework feeds us back. So we trigger a framework will generate logs and reports, and it will tell us what really it did. And these kind of lucid reports is what we can send to the customer as well, or manager as well. So just by reading these logs, these statements, he will understand what really happened. That was not the case when we were using JUnit. We couldn't send it to anyone, and even if we can send this file to anyone to tell that person that we have done this, that person or person who is non-technical will not be able to understand it. But in this case, it's clearly written that it was making this up and running when it entered this URL. The API returned all the users. The only thing which is missing right now is what exactly is returned is not visible. So what we'll do is we will implement the logging mechanism of scenario of Cucumber here using scenario. So maybe I will make this variable a bit more bigger in name, so that you can understand what it is. So scenario object, right? So what I'll do, I will use this scenario object here, scenario dot. Now as I said, it can do three things. One is embed. Embed means you can embed your screenshots once taken. In the API case, it has no relevance, so I'll not not going to use this inside API framework. Then get ID, get names, get source name. This is what I can use to get the scenario information at runtime, right? If let's say if I wish to create a framework, and that framework I need to have my own custom reporting, maybe then in that case I would not like to need it. I would need these methods to be used, but for now I will not use it. One is embed. Then another important thing is get status. This tells you whether test case pass or fail, and that is what is required for you if you want to do something when something gets failed. For example, you want to take screenshot when something is failed, so you're going to use this. I'm going to tell these concepts when I'm going to cover Cucumber with Selenium in the same video chain. Is failed is again for the same, but what I want to use in this case is wait. Sorry, not wait, write. Now this write is what I'm going to use. When I do this write, I have the privilege to log something here. So I can just simply write response of the request is okay. And here what I'll do is I will embed the REST object, RESP dot as string. Right now I have seen, maybe I'll answer that doubt. So I have seen people raising question when to use .to string and when to dot .as string, right? So this as string is a method which is available only in the response or RestAssured API, right? And if you notice, it's to string, it is coming from string object. That means it's not implemented. So even though if you do to string, it will just give you a hash code of response object. Nothing will be returned. So in the case of RestAssured, if you want to get some log or some information about that response body or etc., you have to use .as string here. So here you can notice the response type is response body data, right? This is what we need to use here. Now if I go and run this again, let's see this time what happens. So if I go and run as JUnit test, now test case passed and two other test cases are failed because simply they are not yet implemented. Now again, if I go and check the log here, if I highlight this, if I expand this, you can notice that it is printing the response as well. Or maybe to give it a proper view, I will copy this and I will show it in the browser. Okay, so you see I have complete return statement. Whatever was written is displayed here as a inside the report. Now you can notice that you can say, okay, this is not very good looking because it's going out, it's overshooting the page, right? We can manage these things, and anyway we will not be relying on where it is. We will not be relying on this Cucumber reporting. We are going to implement extend report here, and that extend report will be is far better than this Cucumber report. But to start with, this is what we are going to use. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to convert everything which we have here inside get request, and I am going to merge that, and I'm going to convert that into Cucumber statements. And maybe I'll record another video how to do the post, because post is little bit different than, because it has more things to do, because it has header, it has body, and then it has subsequent checks as well. So I will come up with a new video where I'm going to explain the post, and meanwhile I'll just complete all the get request and I'll publish the code. Thanks.